It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 236. Tonight, I'm joined by Ashgar. Kodra.
Hello.
Tam. Thalen.
I have no idea what's going on.
I never do. I technically know a little bit of what's going on. It's Warframe related, but
I'm behind on Warframe.
Yeah, so we have all been sitting in a channel, not recording, having this lengthy discussion about the Planeswalkers and how they all need to die.
Yeah.
Like, just the members of the Gatewatch. But
yes. I thought they were going to in the whole Hour of Devastation thing, and then they decided that no, they weren't.
There were demise cards for all of them, and I was looking so forward to, like, never seeing them again.
But then, no surprise, Jason's in the next set.
Because he got stranded on an island, apparently. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, things. Ash, you're recording from Pax South.
Hello from San Antonio.
Hello.
Is it cold down there, too?
No, it's 50 degrees. That's not cold.
Oh,
Okay.
no, like, it's 24 here, so, and, like,
Yeah.
windy as hell. I didn't know how cold Texas was right now, because, like, Oklahoma's cold as hell.
People are wrapped up like it's winter. I'm in a t-shirt.
I mean, it's Texas. They don't know what to do when it gets below 60.
50 is winter-ish to me. Although it's been 50, 60, and it's been fine. I don't own an actual coat. I just, like, mostly run around in a hoodie all the time. So, what all cool stuff you see so far?
It is interesting to note the, really, absences from this show.
Oh?
The board game section is way bigger than it is at, like, West, but the video game section is much smaller. There are not a whole lot of big names here. Namco is here, they brought 2 games. Capcom is here, they brought 1 game.
So is Jump Force playable by Namco?
Jump Force is playable.
Cool. That game looks so weird, but I'm kind of into it.
It does look really weird. It's not exactly my thing.
What is Jump Force?
The other Jump Force is a game where there's a fighting game starring the members of the characters from Shonen Jump series.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, that
Naruto's
looks
in
pretty
there,
neat.
DBZ's in there, One Piece is in there.
I guess, like, the quote-unquote Pax South trailer that I've seen is they showed off their character creator, where you can basically, like, take bits and pieces of every Shonen Jump character ever and make your own one.
Okay, that's kind of hilarious.
That I had not seen. I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it on the floor. Namco's other game here is Ace Combat 7. Capcom is showing off the Resident Evil 2 remake. They don't have anything else to show at the moment. What was it? Microsoft has a sort of booth, which is just an ad for Xbox Game Pass, and they don't have anything actually playable at the show. Sony has a booth in which they have Days Gone, which is the other zombie game they have coming out this year. Mostly I'm not terribly interested in it, except the booth has a giant zombie bear, and that looked cool.
I mean, like, I remember seeing Days Gone at E3 a couple of E3s ago and thinking, I'm not sure if this looks interesting or not.
Yeah, I'm still not sure. And I call it the other zombie game they have coming out this year, because The Last of Us Part 2 is supposed to come out this year.
Well, like, okay, so the one thing that would get me interested in Days Gone is if they somehow told us, oh, this is set in the Last of Us universe, it's just another area of the universe.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I think
This
it's
one
a totally
has
different setting.
actual zombies. So,
But it
as
also
usual,
seems to have, like, characters that are totally uninterested in the fact that they're zombies.
Larian is sort of a medium name that is still here for some reason. They don't have anything new to show at all. They're just still showing off Divinity Original Sin 2.
That's so weird to me.
Man, they
There's a
really
lot of
like
that
hanging out
going
with
on.
people. I mean, Ash and I were talking about earlier that, like, Brawlhalla has been at every single one of these, I think. And it apparently is there again this week.
Yep. Brawlhalla is still here. They've been at every PAX I've been to since the game has existed. I mean, the game is free to play, so it's not like they're, selling anything. So as usual, I've been playing a bunch of indie games, both on the board game and video game front. Tiny Fox Zelda is playable, this one, aka Tunic.
Ooh, that's nice.
How's that?
Pretty interesting. Aside from being, a really cute Tiny Fox Zelda with an interesting art style, another interesting thing that game is doing is that it doesn't have text but it's not in the same way that, say, what's the game I'm thinking of? Hyper Light Drifter doesn't have text. This has text, it's just not written in any understandable language. It uses weird runes, and you can generally sort of figure out from context clues, like there might be a little pictograph here, or this might be red and this might be green.
So, like, if literally everyone in the Zelda games just spoke Hylian.
Basically. It's a neat touch. The show demo is pretty short and small, so there's not that much more I can say about it. But since Link Between Worlds is a while ago, so I'm ready for another game in this style. A game that only I would be interested in, I'm pretty sure, is called Nelo, which was a third-person shooter starring a ninja cyborg lizard dude that is also trying to be a bullet hell game. It is definitely the weirdest game I have seen on the floor. It's mostly a third-person shooter, except if you hold a button, you can sort of view it from a top-down perspective, and it looks more like a twin-stick shooter. But also your character has ridiculous movement abilities, like putting even like the Warframes to shame. So it'll be interesting to see how that one shakes up. For something somebody else has actually played, Last Epoch is also on the floor.
What? Okay. What's Last Epoch?
It is a indie Diablo-like that was kickstarted a little while back.
That I bounced after like 2 evenings of playing.
Yeah.
Because it has one key flaw. You cannot move and attack at the same time.
It does not let you bind the basic Diablo left click, which is attack and move, to the same button. This is apparently a topic of internal debate at the studio that I don't know which side they're going to eventually come down on, but it might not matter because the next patch they're adding controller support. So if that ends up being good, then that's just how I'll go play that game.
Yeah, I mean, that would make it much more playable than it was, but like, you either need to do one or the other. And preferably, like, I would love them to put in WASD support as well. Because
like
since
if controller support goes in, then that's a fairly logical thing to add. On the board games front, there is a game that was basically designed for Kodra, and a game that was basically designed for TemTem.
What's a game basically designed for Kodra?
It is called Plunderbound. It is a deck builder worker placement game.
Okay.
That sounds like a Kodra game.
In which you play as a criminal guild, basically, and you try to both extort and sell things on the same board, while your opponents are also trying to do these same things. I played half a game of it on the floor. It seemed really interesting. It's not out or even close to out yet. It's starting later this year. The one they had on the floor was their prototype demo, which has little meeples made of clay by the creator's wife, apparently.
That is the indiest of possible games.
It's kind of adorable, too.
It was quite adorable, actually. It was like not all the cards had art, and it was a prototype, but it was fun to play.
But the mechanics are fun?
The mechanics are good.
Oh.
The game that I saw and was like, this is a TAM game, is called Hermetica. It's a game it's an abstract strategy game with a very simple goal. Get your main piece all the way across the board. And each turn you have 3 actions, which you can use to either place things or have them take actions or have them move. And they each move in different ways. You have like a fire piece, a water piece, and an earth piece, along with your main piece. It has no random elements whatsoever, extremely deterministic, and looks really cool. The only thing that might not make it a TAM game is because it has hexes, and that's more of a me thing than a TAM thing. This one is out. They had the retail release on the show floor, so that should be in stores soonish. I do have to mention that my standards have gone way, way up for a particular subgenre of indie games. Right now, if you are an indie Metroidvania, you need to work really, really hard. Because I played 2 different ones on the show floor, and they're not doing it for me.
Indie Metroidvanias are the new indie games that make you really sad.
But they used to make me really happy, just as a general thing.
It's just now.
And then Hollow Knight happened. But even on a slightly, even if I'm not comparing this to Hollow Knight, if you're going to sort of imitate Castlevania directly, your game needs to be really, really good. Because otherwise it's just going to make me want to play like Art of Sorrow or Symphony of the Night again. And Forsaken Castle doesn't really measure up.
I think that one was there last year, too.
It's been there for 2 years now. Gestalt Vanguard was new for this one, or at least if it was here before, I didn't see it. That one might be saved by its story. But as far as its actual mechanics go, it doesn't feel great, so we'll see. But that one, they definitely want to build a 2D platformer RPG more than they want to build a Metroidvania. I still think they need to work on the jumping, though.
Well, I mean, the way jumps feel is so important to that genre in general, because you're going to be spending so much time traversing.
Mm-hmm. Your jump should be clean. your attack should be clean. Or at least if it's going to take you forever to swing a whip, I should know this going in. Because old Castlevania characters do take forever to swing the whip in comparison to most current examples, even Alucard. And then finally, some really small things. Dicey Dungeons was a game that was being demoed on PC, but I can't imagine isn't a mobile game.
It looked like it. Yeah, I saw the trailer.
It involves you having a character that has particular abilities that are powered by dice, and you roll like 3 dice at the start of your turn. And maybe you can use this 3 as an attack, and it's an attack 3. Or maybe you have a card that lets you reroll a die one time, so you try to reroll it into something better. Or maybe you have a card that... The weirdest one I saw was one that attacked on even numbers and defended on odd numbers on the same card. But also I was playing the warrior. The other station was set up with the mage, who had slightly different and also slightly more interesting cards. So that's definitely one I'm going to pay some attention to. Lapis Labyrinth is a game from, I guess, NIS America. That reminds me of one of their much, much older games called Classic Dungeon, and also The Towers from Disgaea. You play as an adventuring party who sort of stacks up in a tower and plays a 2D platformer adventure type thing. Not quite Metroidvania.
So you're an adventuring party?
Yes. You travel around as a stack.
Oh, when you say a stack, you mean like we're all stacked on top of each other?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Like the World of Final Fantasy?
Also like that, yes.
Okay.
Except they're all the same size, so it's just, just a thing they do.
Because piggyback rides are fun?
It's good enough for the Wee Bear Bears.
It looked really over the top, again, like Disgaea. And it was right next to a whole bunch of Disgaea stuff, so it was really hard to not draw that comparison endlessly.
Yep.
And then I think finally we have whatever Spearhead is currently working on. They came out with Omen Sight last year, which is their spiritual successor to Stories of Path of Destiny, which was very good. I didn't actually get to play Omen Sight last year, but details. Their new game is just an RPG that is top-down, but open-world-y. They said they want to make a living sandbox game in the top-down RPG style. It seems like it is in very early development, so they didn't have a lot to show for it, but definitely something to pay attention to. That's it. No tournaments for me this year.
So what's the star of the show for you so far?
So far, probably Tunic, which admittedly is a game I knew about before the show, but nothing I've seen at the show has impressed me more than that.
So, do you know what platforms it's targeting?
PC and Xbox One, I believe.
Okay.
It's one of those ones where I was concerned that it was just going to hit the Windows Store, but it's already got a Steam page, so... Okay,
cool. I was kind of hoping, Switch would be in there somewhere.
Yeah,
because this seems like a game...
helping with that publishing on that one.
I mean, it seems like a game that would be really good on a Switch.
It sure does, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's a very specific kind of game that makes me think, oh yeah, this would be great on Switch. Which is basically anything like that.
There were 2 multiplayer games that are on Steam Early Access that were at the show because they want to come out with them on consoles, including Switch. And one of them is Super Cane Magic Zero, which is based on an Italian comic. But I didn't think it was that interesting. The other one was Aqua Lunders, which I might just get to give to Grace.
Okay, so in the similar vein of going over a bunch of stuff that you saw at Pax South, I have a brief callback to last week. I'm bad at filling out forms for things I've backed, and one of those was for TemTem. And if you are not familiar with that game, it's a Pokemon-ish game that's an MMORPG. And
when you say Pokemon-ish, you mean Pokemon, but they filed the serial numbers off.
Exactly. That is absolutely what this game is. So in the time between last week and this week, I have gotten access to it and played around a bit. And it is exactly a Pokemon game. Like, the names were changed to protect the innocent, but it's Pokemon in MMORPG form. There's some differences in the way that you summon your creatures, to where, you have these digital cards that they pop out of. The types are all different, but no, it's Pokemon. I got to choose between a green Pokemon, an orange Pokemon, and a purple Pokemon. So that was a little bit different, but I chose the green Pokemon. That looks kind of like an adorable crystal Triceratops.
Is it... What are the graphics like old Pokemon style graphics, or are they
No.
updated? Okay.
No, they're actually like nicer than Pokemon Let's Go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like it looks good. Like it's a really good looking game. But mechanically, like you're playing Pokemon. Everything about it feels like Pokemon. Like the way that if you draw the gaze of trainers out in the field, they force you into a battle. The way that like roaming through weeds is how you find Pokemon that you can capture. And instead of Pokeballs, you have little cards that you throw at them that capture them. It's Pokemon. It's Pokemon in MMO form. And like you're roaming around in the world and there's other trainers that you can see with a specific icon on their head that denote they're another player instead of an NPC. I've not gotten super deep into it, but yeah, no, this is the Pokemon MMO that everyone thought would happen sooner or later. It's just not by the Pokemon company. I mean, the only disappointment is there's no game console in your room when you start. But, I mean, other than that, it's pretty much the same. Like, you have a rival from the beginning. You've got an absent-minded professor from the beginning that runs off and leaves you constantly. You've got a big area to traverse before you get to the first real town. There are random items hidden in the woods, but instead of balls, they're like cubes. I'm dead serious. It has been changed just enough to not get sued. The
Hopefully
names and
they gauged properly.
were changed to protect the innocent.
I mean, there are a lot of monster fighting and catching games.
It's true.
There are, but
yes, this sounds like they wanted to take the mechanics as much as possible.
Yeah. So the most interesting thing about it is like you actually have responses that you can give back to almost everything that's said, and the characters act differently based on your response. So like you can say stuff like, you know, that you don't remember any of this, that, you know, none of this sounds familiar when you first wake up and are told about, you know, going off to the academy to learn how to fight TemTems.
Aren't those a type of cookie?
No, those are TemTams, but which are tasty.
Yes,
we
they
finally
are.
have them available in America, and you can get them at Target.
My wife has been borderline obsessed with them ever since, you know, when she went to school in Japan, because you can get them there.
Yeah,
and one of her friends there was from Australia, so you know. But yeah, once they showed up at Target, she was all over them.
Yeah, we keep getting additional flavors. Like, I think we're up to 4 flavors. But anyway, TemTams are amazing. Like, if you have the opportunity to eat one, do it.
Yeah.
And then you'll eat the rest of that package.
Yeah, and I've now done the TemTam Slam, and I understand the appeal. Drinking coffee through a TemTam is actually like really good.
But anyway, Pokemons, but not Pokemon.
TemTems.
Yeah, it's TemTem. And it's a good version of Pokemon. Like, it feels good. It's WASD movement. You have keybinds. I think you like interact with things with F, or you can click on stuff. Man, it's Pokemon, but not Pokemon. Anyway, so definitely watch that as it evolves. They're in alpha. They say it's very alpha, so I've not necessarily encountered any real bugs about it, but
also you can't get into the alpha if you weren't in the Kickstarter. Your next chance to get it is going to be way later this year.
Yeah. Maybe you backed it and forgot, like me, and you've got emails waiting on you. I mean, that's a thing that could happen.
Theoretically, that's a thing that could happen.
But yeah, I mean, I was impressed at how far along it is. It has really good music. The visuals are great looking. I've only seen like half a dozen different not Pokemons. So I don't know how many varieties are out there in the wild.
It's not 151?
I have no idea. Like, you have it's not a Pokedex, but it's like named something similar. It's like a Timopedia or something like that.
Apparently there are plans for 160, but not all of those exist yet.
Aha.
Yeah, and they're like digital TemTems that are like supposedly rare in the world, but
apparently it's the Tem deck.
Tem deck, there you go. So not Pokedex, the Tem deck. I knew it was like something that sounded really familiar and similar. So on this next topic, I have a coworker who comes into my cube every so often, usually to complain about a game. And the game of choice right now is Stellaris, and how they totally broke the game, and it's no longer enjoyable. So,
I disagree.
I mean,
But it's, I mean, if he
It's
played
certainly
Stellaris
different
before the most
now.
recent expansion, like yeah, it's a different game now than it was then. It's true.
yeah,
But I mean, this
yeah.
is what Paradox does. Like, this is not new.
Yeah, he said it was really fun prior to this expansion, and now it's not fun anymore for him.
I mean, if
So I
the
don't know
thing-
what that means, but
if your favorite part of Stellaris was micromanaging planets, then I guess so.
so of note, he's running. God, I don't remember the name of the. There's another game that came out recently where you can basically leave it running 24/7, and your little bots will go off and trade in the economy. And I'm drawing a blank on the name, but like he has been playing that game, so he may have a very specific kind of enjoyment cycle out of these games.
But yeah, like the biggest thing that this expansion did for Stellaris is you don't have to micromanage your planets anymore. Like it's much more straightforward, and yeah. Like the space stuff is pretty much the same as it used to be.
How you play the game for certain play styles also dramatically changed.
Okay, so I had to go
Like
look
if you
at
want to make your
Steam.
research-focused empire now, it's a little different.
I had to go look at Steam. He's playing X4 Foundations, and literally his account is logged in 24/7. Like, I can count that he will be in that game.
So the
Now-
empire that I'm playing now is pretty research focused, and I mean, so far it doesn't seem like I'm having to do anything that differently from before. I mean, I'm still fairly early game, so maybe it becomes more noticeably different further on.
So, what is the big changes with this one?
The big change is how planet management works.
Yeah.
They got rid of tiles entirely,
Thank goodness.
and planet management is now focused on districts and jobs, where districts are really only important because they provide jobs.
Yeah, just basically population grows. You want sufficient jobs for your population, and the jobs produce, energy and minerals and alloys and all of these things. There's more resources than there used to be. There is that. You don't make spaceships out of minerals anymore. You make spaceships out of alloys. So you need to turn minerals into alloys.
But you make alloys out of minerals.
Yeah, I mean there are some other ways to get them, but that's the primary way. And then there are buildings, and basically building slots open up as you gain more population. But the main thing is you're not having to fiddle around with the tiles on the planet and put the right things in the right tiles based on what the tile has already in it and adjacency
Ooh.
bonuses and all that.
Is it more like Civ where you're just building buildings on your planets, or do you
Yes.
even do that at all?
I mean, you are building some buildings, but yeah, it's a lot more like that. You don't have to worry about where the thing is going on your planet.
So more like Master of Orion style, where you're just like developing a planet as though it were a city.
Yeah, pretty much. This is where I have to admit I've never played Master of Orion.
Oh
Feel bad
man,
about that. Yeah, I know.
like I feel like
missed it.
Master of Orion 2 is still 100% playable. It's one of those rare cases where I feel like a game from that era still holds up pretty well. But then again, I also love, Fallout London, so I don't know, I could be skewed. So having never played Stellaris, I really have no clue how deep the rabbit hole goes on that game.
It's in a bit of a weird spot because this was the second major overhaul they did last year. And I'd say this is actually the larger one, even though the first one was when they pushed it to 2.0.
Yeah, I would agree.
Their big 2.0 push was reworking how your empire actually expands, which had a very large impact on how you play the game.
Yeah, I've sort of hopped back into it after I've missed the last few cycles, and it's only just barely recognizable.
One of the things that is kind of interesting is it's kind of expensive to catch yourself back up.
That's
Like-
what Steam sales are for.
Yeah.
Also, I don't feel like most of those... The only DLC I feel like is really important is Utopia.
Okay.
Like basically, apart from the big expansions, the other ones mostly add like more events or the Leviathans or things like that they're nice to haves, but they're not like core to the game. I mean, I could make a case for specifically not getting Leviathans so you don't have to worry about, horrible monsters rampaging through your empire. Because they'll do that.
You're saying you didn't want to have the Ether Drake just sort of roaming through your empire? You didn't want to have the second sun come along as, a giant star-eating monstrosity tries to eat your planets?
Yeah, I just ran into the Stellarite Devourer in my current game, and I am nowhere near powerful enough to do anything about him. So he may be destroying some stars before I get around to taking him out.
The good news is, actually, if you leave him alone, he will stay in one place. But if you touch him, he will suddenly become very aggressive.
I won't be touching him anytime soon. I have a devouring swarm next door to me that I have to deal with first. On the bright side, having a devouring swarm next door means that all of my other neighbors really want to be friends with me. Because we all have to worry about that guy.
Mutual rivals is a pretty good diplomacy bonus.
Talking about Stellaris and the arc of development it's gone through also makes me think of Warframe and how much has changed.
So, what all has changed recently? I know they added the open world area.
So, Warframe has a star map that is sensible now.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's completely different than it used to be.
Completely different. It's actually a little bit off-putting if you
already had all the planets unlocked. It's a weird experience.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can no longer get from planet to planet like you used to, or at least not. Planets are unlocked in the same manner.
Yeah.
So the way it's supposed to work now is there are these gate things between the planets, and each one has some certain requirements to be able to go into it.
It's Super Mario World.
And activate it. And if you were playing before these things came along, then you've probably already unlocked things on planets that, further on than you realistically ought to have access to. And you can still get to those zones. They didn't shut anything off that you had access to before, even if it would have made sense to do so.
It's basically got a structure where you can go to any mission node. Mission nodes are like levels. They're all connected by a web of connections, Mario World style. Each planet has terminal points that are boss fights that unlock the next, a planet in a different direction. And the way you're supposed to progress is you do all the missions on the planet, which are all sort of broadly similar levels, achieve whatever the requirements are for the fortresses, basically the relays, beat the boss in the relay, and then you unlock a new planet.
I will say, even as a veteran, some of all of the junction bosses are other Warframes, and some of them are a surprise. Oh, whoops, that wasn't the real Loki you shot. That was a duplicate, and Loki's duplicate is cheating and reflects damage to you. Whoops, you just one-shot yourself.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
But because it's, because it's Mario World, if you have
relays,
a node...
junctions.
Yeah, junctions. That's
relays right. are the places that we all hang out.
Yeah, relays are cities. But yeah, so if you want to get to a node, you just, as long as you've beaten a node, you can go to the next node in the chain. But if you've gotten a bunch of stuff unlocked, then you have missions that you've completed on other planets, which means you have nodes unlocked. So even if you technically can't follow a straight path from where you start on Earth all the way to, wherever, you can still just hop around and do those missions. But it also, one of the other things is that I've noticed with it is one of the reasons that I sort of dipped out of playing a couple years back was it felt like the only meaningful thing I could do were Orokin Void missions.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't doing
let's run another tower for survival.
Yeah, exactly. Let's run this one mission over and over and over again because it's got the best stuff and it got really boring fighting the same things in the same tile set and frankly the same mission over and over and over again.
Hearing corrupted Vor's speech for the 500th time.
Behold, they cut me down, but still I speak.
Lord. And so what they've done a really good job of is I found that there are a lot more relevant missions that are a lot more varied now. So there's tons of interesting stuff that I can do, or at least tons of different stuff in different tile sets against different enemies. And then the places that you do spend a lot of time, like the plains and Fortuna, are big and interesting.
All you want to do is farm prime parts, because the missions where those are rotating now, then you're going to have a lot of different tile sets and a lot of different mission types.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you... So, okay, I'm going to need to talk to you guys, because how do you figure out where the prime parts are?
This is the best part. It tells you in the game.
Yeah.
Basically, instead of prime parts being tied to a particular mission type, they are tied to a particular relic type, and you bring that relic with you to a Fisher mission of an appropriate level.
Basically, they give you lockboxes, not like ones that you open with money, but they give you things that can turn into items. You take those things with you into a mission type, and you just by looking at the item, you know what it might have inside, and you take that into the mission type to try to unlock it.
To be completely fair, that's not different than how tower keys worked before, just, it's visible now.
Yeah. And yeah, the rotating stuff means that like there's more varied content, and even if they don't change the missions, you're still doing different missions more frequently.
That's really cool.
Also, for anyone who really, really loved Tower 4 Survival for some reason, there is a particular node on the map called Mod, which is basically just that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that node is really annoying.
Yes. The other thing is the other thing that they did that I think was really good is they changed the enemy cap for missions, or the level cap for missions. Because one of the other things that I ran into was for pretty much even the hardest missions that weren't like obvious raid boss, like raid style missions that were like the do this special crazy thing. I was like, okay, I'm going to go do Tower 4 Survival and be bored for the first 20 minutes. And then the interesting enemies are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can just go into a level 45 mission.
Oh.
And like your level cap is 30. So you are starting with tough stuff. But it also means that missions that don't have escalating difficulty can still be interesting and fun and give good rewards. Because it's like, oh, I'm going into a level 45 spy mission. This is going to be tough.
I want to say the cap for that was 35 before. I don't remember what Huracan used to be.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not Huracan, whatever it was. Oceana.
But yeah, like they significantly changed the map, and the map is more sensible now. But, and they also, the other thing, we knew this already, but they like added a bunch of story to this previously this game that only told you story by you scanning things and reading about them in the codex. They have like full-fledged story missions and like musical numbers now, apparently.
Which is what we were whistling at the start of this.
But yeah, they're like introducing new characters, and to a greater or lesser extent, it's clear they're learning each iteration. Like I haven't seen backsliding. There probably has been, but it doesn't have the thing that I've seen in other games where I feel like they should have learned the right lessons because they got it right before, but then this new release is less good somehow. Because that sometimes happens.
Destiny 2?
I wasn't going to say it.
Weirdly, not the one I was thinking of, but fair.
Well, I've said this before, like, by the time Year 3 came out, they had figured out a bunch of stuff, and then Destiny 2 came out, and they had forgotten that stuff.
Yeah, which is really weird.
I think that's just a situation where that development cycle was going on independently of all the cool things that they put into Year 3 of Destiny 1.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And also, Warframe has gotten... Warframe already had lots and lots of crazy weapons, but they've gotten a lot better at crazy weapons that are actually good. And I think that's really cool.
So, is there an easy way to not get the night cycle of the plains?
No. I think it's a 3-hour or 4-hour cycle.
Every time I try and play, it's the friggin' night cycle, which it might as well just be useless to me. Like, what I want from that game is patrol zones from Destiny. Because, like, I don't like most of the mission types, and they feel like super linear, and I mostly want what the plains should be, just roaming around and killing stuff and doing nonsense.
I'll be honest, that's what I spend most of my time doing in the game right now. Like, I finally understand why you like patrols so much, because Warframe gave it to me in a form that I enjoy.
Right, but, like, for whatever reason, my time zone always seems to be during night. And, like, it's a murderous nightmare at night. You should never go to the plains at night.
Okay, daytime lasts 100 minutes, and nighttime lasts 50 minutes.
Yeah, maybe it's just bad luck, but, like, every time I pop into game, I want to go check out Plains of Eidolon. It's nighttime.
I feel like I have the other thing. I need to farm things at night, and it's never night.
I have the same thing. I'm like, I need to be killing stuff at night.
Time zones are assholes, and also they should just let you start a day cycle or a night cycle.
That part I agree with. Like, if you're gonna lock a bunch of stuff behind can only do during the day or can only do at night, like, give me some way to mitigate that.
Or just let me go into a solo instance.
Yeah, I mean,
I can control my time.
It is a solo instance, so that makes it a little more annoying.
Yeah.
Night appears not to be, because like I'm always in there with a bunch of other players.
Well, if you have it set to public, you will join in with other players.
Yeah, I have mine set to private, and it's just me.
Yeah, that's a setting on your end.
Nighttime is, until you get a couple of useful tools, nighttime is a scary place. Getting used to hopping around as the operator is definitely a thing.
Related, getting your quest up to the War Within is super important.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
it's super important.
Like, all the useful things are locked behind that quest.
I mean...
Also, that quest is actually interesting.
It's true.
It really is.
That quest is also interesting.
Yeah, but how much of the not interesting stuff do I have to do to progress that?
You have to get to Sedna.
Does that mean I'm pretty sure I already have access to Sedna.
Yes, but you have to complete the Sedna junction. So you have to do some specific things.
How many planets in is Sedna?
It is
Pair number.
Currently the last planet.
No, Eris is the last planet.
Oh, right, I guess, well, I think Sedna has higher level stuff than Eris, but it used to be the middle planet.
Which means that if you had unlocked it previously, for any reason, you might have actually, you might already have done it, or already have access to it.
Yeah, I mean, like, for a game I already have a complicated relationship with, for various reasons, I feel like that's a large ask to get to the... I mean, like, I feel like Warframe is for me what Destiny is for you, Tam.
Yeah,
like, it's a really large ask to get to the point where the game supposedly gets interesting.
Yeah, like, it's a game where, at least, it feels like it mirrors, like you said, it mirrors my experience with Destiny, where, like, as long as the game is not making it difficult for me to enjoy it, I can enjoy it, but the moment it makes it difficult or unintuitive to enjoy, I'm out.
Yeah.
Which I can totally understand, because there's, like, their messaging is definitely improved, but I don't know that it's good yet. In fact, I don't think it's good yet. It is much better.
Okay, Tam, I have no idea how to launch into this next one, but it's a you thing, so I'm going to leave it in your hands to launch into it.
Oh, yeah. So, weirdly, this is one of those things that came up when I was playing Hitman, and what got me thinking about it was I did a mission where I was pretending to be a server at a party, carrying a tray of drinks and serving them to people, including my target. But if I moved faster than a slow walk with the tray of drinks, or if any of a variety of rowdy guests bumped me, the drinks would spill. And it was interesting because I forget who I was talking with this about, and their response was, that sounds like misery. That sounds like frustrating.
Sounds like absolute misery.
Like, sounds like frustrating misery. And I was like, but no. I found it really cool because this was a really easy way for me to accomplish this. Like, for all of the different ways I had to accomplish a particular thing, this was like the easiest and most straightforward. It just required a bunch of, like, careful execution on my part. Like, this was the difficult execution solution versus this was the difficult execution. Versus like, oh hey, this is the one that requires me to have an encyclopedic knowledge of guard patrols or whatever. But the coworker I was talking to was then talking about Red Dead Redemption and how, like, there's tons of little things in that game that, like, make it feel more like a world, even though they're objectively annoying.
I have heard a lot of frustration about that game for that reason.
Yeah. And I think that that's an example of a game that, like, takes it too far. But also there's a bunch of games that I can think of where there are these little things that add friction that make the game feel, that enrich the experience, even if you can't point to the mechanic as good. And, like, one of the ones that I'm thinking of is WoW's flight paths or waiting for the boat, where in both cases you're adding a bunch of technically unnecessary waiting and friction to your play experience, but but like flight pads in WoW do a really great job of making the world feel like a seamless world and not just a disconnected bunch of zones.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but like also as someone who's been through a lot of their beta processes where they put in Captain Placeholder, like I always kind of mourn the loss of Captain Placeholder because it gives me instant access to everything.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that I find really, really interesting is like if you were to say like, hey, flight pads, good or bad design, most people are going to be like, man, I would rather just have instant teleportation. Just give me instant teleportation because it's more convenient. I like it better. But like, but then I
prior
look
to the addition of flight, it also let them show off some things that you couldn't see otherwise.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Ironforge airfield or the Dancing Troll Village.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff like that as well. And that's sort of what I mean by like they're enriching the experience, even if they're like not satisfying themselves. And like there's obviously lines like, oh, hey, if you need to adjust your saddle too often in your, fantasy game, then that's annoying. But the fact that a horse controls differently than you just walking around makes the horse feel like it enriches the experience, even though the horse is more annoying to control.
Yeah, and I'm having some of that experience with Assassin's Creed Origin. Like, the boats in that game are kind of unwieldy, but as a result, it feels good when you start to master the movement.
Yeah.
Do they turn like boats?
They turn like boats, yeah. But if you get to a point where you're thinking one or two steps ahead, like you can totally account for that.
Yeah. And it means that like it really puts you in the situation where you're thinking about you've got like it's a richer experience because you're thinking about these different types of movement, and it's not just you running around stabbing people but with a slightly different skin.
Well, and so like while I would say that flight paths are largely annoying, they do serve a very key purpose for me in that they add some kind of a cost benefit to doing things in a region instead of just spending your entire night porting all over the friggin' place and not actually getting anything accomplished.
Yeah.
Because
they also
like if
add
I
a
have
benefit to the ability to port places for the classes that can do that.
Well, like, so if I have free movement in games, I find myself just porting all over the place, but never really settling into a place for the night.
Yeah.
Whereas if I know, oh, well, that's going to be an additional 30 minutes, I might as well find something to do near where I'm at.
And one of the things that I think of is FF14. A lot of their quests, especially once you've got like most of the world unlocked, don't feel great. Like the story parts are great, but the actual like quest actions are okay. I port to whatever the nearest thing is and run to the person and talk to the person to kick off the next cutscene.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't feel great. Like their quest design is not.
Well, especially the holiday quests, because like they always take place in like one of three areas, and you just end up porting back and forth.
Usually involve you teleporting to the other two.
Yeah, exactly. Like it involves you visiting the three main cities. And now that you know where everything is, you can kind of guess where the NPCs are going to be. And as a result, you can accomplish most of the holiday quests in Final Fantasy XIV in like 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. But it was legitimately until when Stormblood came out and updated the map and updated both the map and like how the map operates. It was then before I even registered what the world map of that game looked like, because I just teleported everywhere.
Yeah, because effectively, like in the player mind, you know, Ulda and Gridania and Limsa Lumensa are like islands that are disconnected from each other, and they're like three separate regions of content that don't actually interlink, but no, really they do.
Yeah,
you just don't ever use them that way.
Yeah.
Prior to unlocking the airship, I did run on some character or another from Ulda to Gridania to pick up a class.
Yeah, same. And it was like, that's weird, but like that was a cool run. It was fun to do.
It was slightly more fun than the Wetlands run from Stormwind.
Yes, this is accurate. But like that forced travel time is inconvenient but makes the world feel richer and more connected and so on. And I definitely see that being streamlined out of a lot of games.
Well, and honestly, without scale, the games end up feeling like lobbies.
Yes. I mean, it's my big frustration with Destiny, and like Warframe, even though I like Warframe, it's got a very similar thing where it's like I don't feel like I'm in a world. I feel like I'm in a lobby. I feel like I'm in an overly complicated lobby with an obtuse interface, not like an actual world that I'm inhabiting.
Now, I will say one of the things like on the Destiny front that has helped is the last 2 major patch cycles have added additional areas to the tower that didn't exist before. And as a result, it feels like, oh, this is starting to open up a little bit, but it's still like a very, very, very limited zone.
Yeah. Well, I think of like vanilla WoW Stormwind, where you are running all over the place in inconvenient ways to get to the various services you needed. And like if you teleported to Stormwind, you were not anywhere useful. You had to like run to somewhere useful. But it also gave you a sense that you were in a city, and like parts of the city had a purpose, and you weren't just dropped into the most convenient part of it immediately every time.
And by that token, like in the later versions post Cataclysm, they created 2 useful areas of town that gave you everything you could ever want in that little area.
Yeah.
And as a result, like I never left the Dwarven Quarter because that was my part of town.
Yeah.
Like, I would never darken the door of the other area of town because, like, Dwarven Quarter's my part of town. Like, I uprooted from Ironforge and moved to the Dwarven Quarter in Stormwind.
I felt similarly about the Tauren district of Orgrimmar.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I use. Like, I don't go to any of the other banks or auction houses. I'm in the Tauren Quarter. I think Orgrimmar actually has way more auction houses and banks than Stormwind does right now.
Yeah, but
I think it's got the original one, and then one in the Tauren area, and then another one in the Goblin area, something like that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a thing that I find interesting is, and maybe this is just like game design wankery on my part, but I'm always sort of interested by the difference between what I cognitively enjoy and what I secretly enjoy without realizing it. Where like, oh, I do enjoy that I, have to carefully, that I can't just pick up, hit the button to poison the wine and then pick up the tray and walk it straight over to the guy and mission complete. I like that there's some more difficulty than that, even though I'm doing the exact same task. Or like little things, as long as they're not overwhelming, the way it sounds like Red Dead Redemption was, where it's just too full of those things.
Well, and to some extent, like Far Cry 5 has some of that stuff going on as well, to where you're like just running to another mission, and from out of nowhere, a bear comes from the forest and mauls you, which is entertaining the first time, but like when you feel like you're headed somewhere like with a purpose, and you randomly get mauled, that's annoying.
Yeah.
I think games have to figure out how to make the downtime interesting to you without making it like while still being like downtime, while still being friction.
Yeah.
Like there's friction that is like, oh, that's cool, that's making me think or like engaging with me, and then there's friction where it's like, I am moving slowly here.
Yeah, like one of the situations, like going back to Hitman as an example, like one of the things that it does that I don't like is 47's run speed. Like if you tell 47 to run, not only does that draw attention to you, it's also not that fast. And like sometimes you can just run, sometimes I run into situations where it's like, I need to go over to that door. There's nothing in between me and in there. I can just run. But like if I hit run, it's this like kind of awkward shuffle that's only slightly faster than walking. And so it's like, this is annoying, but not adding anything to the experience. Whereas when I feel like moving slower in stealth does add something to the experience. And, certainly I put a bunch of work into mitigating it whenever I can because I like stealth and I like moving fast. But at that point, I'm making like conscious trade-offs.
And I have to say, playing Assassin's Creed a lot, I really don't like stealth that much. And the only way I got that achievement is because, like, it was a very specific situation where I could easily kill 10 people in a row without being detected. Most of my MO is like, oh, I'm going to go into a hostile area. I'm just going to murder everyone. And when they call for guards, I'm just going to murder them too. And I'm going to kill everybody, and then I'll rescue the person I'm supposed to rescue and escort them out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's always been my tack on stealth stealth games are great as long as the stealth is always optional.
Yeah.
Because the moment it's not optional, you've just created a really annoying failure condition. And notably, pretty much all of my favorite stealth games don't have, oh, you've been detected, mission failure moments.
Well, it's why we both love Dishonored as a series.
Yeah.
Because I get to play a murder hobo, and you get to play the most skilled assassin that's sneaky ever.
Yeah, like the whole appeal of stealth games is giving you a bunch of different ways to accomplish a given problem or puzzle. If you remove that, then you just have an annoying movement mechanic.
The ability to recover if your first plan goes badly.
Yeah, it would be like if a game gave you a Rubik's Cube to solve and only the number of moves necessary to complete it. That would not be fun. But yeah, that was sort of what I was thinking was I like those little things that make games feel like worlds and spaces I'm inhabiting. I like closing doors behind me in stealth games.
Yeah, I've been experiencing a lot of that the world feels like an inhabited place while playing Assassin's Creed Origin. Like, the way just things link together, the way that, like, patrols happen independent of my actions.
Yeah, and it makes it so much more satisfying to explore that space, too, because it feels more real. It's not like, oh, I just want to get up here because there's a spinny thing for me to grab. It's like, oh, hey, actually, if I get up here, I can see some other piece of this big interconnected map, or like even just get a cool view.
Well, and like the really rewarding thing that I'm experiencing with Origins is, like, because I did this thing over here, now something else opened up in an area that I've already been to that causes me to go back and revisit those areas.
Yeah, and because you don't have, because it's an actual big open space and it's not just like disconnected levels, even though you have to travel all through the different parts of it, it still is like I can make changes and they feel meaningful, not like I just loaded into a different map. Because I often have that problem with like hard mode versions of dungeons in FF14, where I guess this is technically the same tile set, but I don't get a clear sense, like it doesn't feel like the same thing at all. Or like,
I feel like some of those have been executed well and some of them have not.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's like ones that, like, you can tell that the actions that you took before were in play when you come in the second time. Like, there's holes in the walls from, like, where things popped out at you previously, and those feel great.
Yeah.
But the ones that are just like, okay, I was in here, but now there's just a totally different group of people that are in here now. oh, I don't know what happened.
Copperfoot Heart is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think Hullbreaker Heart is pretty good, but by the same token, Stone Vigil Heart isn't.
Yeah.
Like, there's one, I'm trying to remember which one it is, but there's one where it's like you can actually see a lot of the area that you end up going into in the hard mode the first time you're in there, but I think it's flooded. I'm trying to remember which dungeon that was, though. It's been so long.
Fractal Continuum is another interesting example.
What's the one where basically
not that one.
The second one that you go to, you're basically rescuing someone from it?
That's probably Karn?
Yeah. Sunken Temple of Karn.
I would not really hold that up as a good example of a hard mode. It sort of just feels like another dungeon in the same set.
Right. It feels like a recycle of the same tile set. Now, on the same token, like, the thing that frustrates me a lot in a game is if you've put this mundane thing in and then forced me to do it.
Yeah. Well, unless that thing is relatively benign, yeah.
Well, like, so example, if you have a game and, like, the only way for you to progress in a specific storyline is if you now take up fishing and then learn fishing and master it and I think that's a much bigger thing. But like MMOs in which there's a looting animation versus not.
Sometimes in MMO, you can just hit a button and you'll automatically get all the loot and it'll go straight into your inventory. And other MMOs, you'll have to like click on the mob and lean over and loot.
Well, and sometimes you don't even have to hit a button.
Yeah, or that. And like, man, do I prefer... Yeah, sure, it means that I spend a little bit more time per mob and so on. But man, do I prefer like actually taking an action to loot and not just like auto-magically getting everything in my inventory, because then loot doesn't feel like it means anything.
Give me that suck up no loot button, please, from Guild Wars 2. I want that button.
I mean, even that button is me doing something. Because yeah, I mean, auto loot a bunch of things all at once, like clicking individual mobs, and that's kind of where the line is it's like I prefer the WoW style. I click on a mob and loot everything nearby, to the Guild Wars style. I hit a button while I'm running, and there's no pause whatsoever, and I just loot everything in the vicinity. But I prefer both to like the Final Fantasy. I kill a mob and it automatically puts crap in my inventory.
Well, and I think what makes that feel worse is how useless a lot of that stuff feels.
Yeah.
Like, it has some use, but unless you're crafting, it probably doesn't have a use that you'll care about.
But it has a use that I care about very much. It sells for kill to people who craft.
Yes, give it to your retainer.
Speaking of which, if you're trying to clear out your inventory, do that thing.
Yeah, just sell it all. If you can put
mean,
it on the market and sell it to other people, then that means if you ever find that you did need one, you can buy one from somebody else.
I mean,
just sell it all.
My inventory's full of gear that looks cool. That's my problem with inventory.
I mean, do you need some glamour prisms? I can make you a whole bunch of glamour prisms.
Yeah, but like that's a whole... I mean, this is admittedly one of the things that's keeping me from actively playing Final Fantasy XIV, is the fact that my inventory and retainers, all 6 of them, are nonsense, and sitting down and fixing that feels like it's the equivalent of filing my taxes.
Don't fix all of it.
And it took me a lot longer to do that than filed my taxes.
I'll give you 100 glamour prisms. Just throw everything in your inventory into the glamour toilet and move on. Worry about your retainers later.
Yeah, but my retainers are all full of glamour gear too.
Right, but it'll be fine on your retainers until you get around to it.
Okay.
I've got a lot of glamour gear on my retainers too. I'm just not worrying about it right now.
That's basically how mine is. Like
every so often when my inventory starts to get too full, I either throw some stuff in the glamour commode or I sell some things, and slowly things get taken care of. But yeah, we just get your actual inventory dealt with, and you can worry about retainers later.
What's funny is, like, inventory management is, like, the bane of my existence, but, like, I know at least one other person that loves inventory management. Like, it's another blogger. And, like, we've had this discussion before, and, like, he enjoys moving stuff around in his inventory and, like, filing it away, and feels like it's accomplishing something, and, like, that's cool if that works for you, but, like, for me, I prefer the ESO method of having a bag of holding that everything goes into that I just don't give a shit about until I do give a shit about it.
ESO is actually one of the examples of feel like my inventory fills up too fast.
That's definitely true.
I am a subscriber to ESO. I have the magical crafting inventory.
I also have the magical crafting inventory, and my inventory still fills up too fast.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, I loot everything, but I also religiously break down everything, and that's how I've leveled all of my crafting.
For me, my primary character is not the one that is doing most of the crafting, so I have to take it to a bank in order to get to my other characters.
I only really have the one character, so that helps a little bit, though I am super interested in the Necromancer.
It seems really weird with the main story the way it is.
Yes!
To be introducing a Necromancer class.
I don't know how that's going to work, but...
I realize that after you're done with the original main story, it no longer matters, but still.
Well, and they no longer start you in the original sequence, unless you specifically want to.
Well, even then, you have to opt into it. You need to travel there and start it yourself. You start in whatever the current, most recent expansion you own is.
And quite honestly, like, I still greatly prefer the original starting experience.
I think I prefer the Morrowind one. I don't really like the Somerset one.
No, I'm not a fan of the Somerset starting experience. But I honestly have no clue how we ended up doing this. I mean, I realize I just took us there, but like, yeah, we've reached
Because we drift.
Yes.
we drift. Like we're over at this point, I think. So we should probably do the good night thing. Any final commentary? Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.